see y'all in the ATL. The Hornets are headed to the Peach Bowl. They got a rendezvous in the next round with Arizona State. Here's how they got there, taking on the Orange of Clemson, and Jaden Blue was just leaving. Blue, you're my boy. Jaden Blue, part of a ground attack for the Longhorns, on his way to 177 yards of total offense performance. And then I got Trey Wisner. He had 15 carries, 110 yards of his own, 2 rushing touchdowns of his own. First game with multiple rushing scores in his career. Quinn Ewers can also spin it a little bit. That's a good ball right there to Gunnar Helm. Ewers, 25th straight game with a passing touchdown, longest active streak in the FBS. It was 28-10, but it did get down to a one-score game. Cade Klubnik, Westlake, product there in Austin, kept them close, but Jaden Blue turning on the Jets, and he's gone. 14 carries, $146. Obligatory Matthew McConaughey sighting, 38-24. Clemson had a shot to try to make it closer, but 4th and goal at the 1, no dice. Texas defense stands up, 38-24. They take on Arizona State in Atlanta next week. Hey, we welcome in Louis Riddick and Paul Finebaum back to SportsCenter AM. Louis, want to start with you. What'd you like from Texas last night?
Well, I think you saw Texas, Randy, play the way that Steve Sarkisian wants them to play. He wants to play a version of bully ball. He wants to be a run-first football team that then can play action pass you and push the ball down the field when he wants to on his terms. And if you can average as a team over 6 yards per carry, if you have a running back like Jaden Blue who's averaging over 10 yards per carry, then you supplement him with Contravian Wisner, the way in which they showed last night, this is going to be a hard football team to beat. That's the sweet spot for them, the way in which they played last night. And look, I would be remiss if I didn't say this. It's all set up by the play of the offensive line. Look, Clemson's defensive front, if you look at their individual guys, you know, like 1 through 6 in terms of their rotation, 1 through 7, these are some darn good athletes and some darn good football players, and they got dominated last night at the line of scrimmage. And again, that theme is going to be something that's repeated over and over and over again as far as the discourse surrounding this college football playoffs. Can you win in the trenches? Can you control the line of scrimmage? Can you run the football? And I know that sounds, old school, but at this time of year, that's really what it comes down to. Texas shows you last night that that is exactly how they want to play and that they're capable of playing. And if they can control the line of scrimmage like that, defensively, they're going to need to make sure that they shore up their pass defense. And they have some fantastic players in the back end as well. But hey, tip your cap to Cade Klubnik. He played his rear end off last night, and he did everything he could to put Clemson in a position to win. And Texas will get that squared away. But if they can play with that kind of identity on offense going forward, Texas is going to be hard. Texas is going to be hard to beat. Now, I know you're going to ask me a question about really what the key is for them, and it is quarterback play.
We'll get to that. Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, and to me, it was the defensive side yesterday because they were tested. We finally had a football game of all the 4 that we had Friday night and Saturday. This one came down to a singular play when Clemson got it to a one-score game and then had that 4th down that could have turned this into a nail-biter. But give Texas's defense the credit. They finally came through. Not that they weren't playing well, but they let up a little bit in the second half, but they shut Clemson down on that 4th down play and had the victory.
Louis, I want to go back to the one thing that you outlined, and it's quarterback play from Quinn Ewers. What'd you see from him last night?
Look, he just needs to be the reason that he doesn't need to be the reason that they win football games. He just cannot be the reason that they lose, meaning he cannot turn the football over. He has to be efficient as far as distributing the football, getting it to the playmakers. And then when the big plays are there to be made down the field, he has to make those. And by and large, he did that last night. And look, he's not even operating with a full set of wide receivers right now because Isaiah Bond didn't play, and he's still on the mend. And hopefully he'll be available to play at some point in time in these playoffs coming back from that high ankle sprain. And what he showed is that, look, I'm a guy who's played a lot of football. I'm a guy who understands what my role is in this game. I'm primarily a pocket type of passer who's going to need to make good decisions and need to distribute the football accurately and not put the ball in harm's way. And if he can just do that, I think this team is talented enough, especially when it's at 100% strength, to play with anyone, absolutely anyone in the country. And they've already shown that. But again, look, Arch Manning, I still believe, has a role on this football team, and he will play a part if they are to make a run at the national title. He will play a part, and he'll play a big part because of his mobility and his ability to run the football. But Quinn just can't be the reason why this football team stalls out on the offensive side of the football, and he said that last night.
On the call for Penn State and SMU, your biggest takeaway from the Nittany Lions was what?
Wow, man. I mean, just the kind of ferocity that they came out in that game with on the lines of scrimmage. Look, I think they set the tone defensively right away, Randy. I mean, this defense has playmakers at all three levels. You saw Abdul Carter, the All-American defensive end. He terrorized SMU all game long, and they have so much speed at linebacker. Look, between Tony Rojas, Dominic DeLuca, Kobe King, these guys fly around the football, and they set the tone right away. Right away, they had Kevin Jennings in his own head sitting there going, look, this is obviously not the kind of defensive team I haven't seen before. And if Penn State can play that way, they can play with anyone. And then on the offensive side, it's a continuous evolution under new offensive coordinator Andy Koltanecki, who came to them from Kansas, in terms of how they want to attack. This is a run-centric football team. It's a two-headed monster as far as the run game is concerned, with Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton. And those two are hammers. They're both 220 plus. And now Drew Aller has continued to evolve, not just as a pocket passer, but as you see on your screen, as a runner. And that's something you don't really associate with a 6'5", 235-pound quarterback. But he has said, look, it's something that Koltanecki has asked him to do more of. It keeps the defense honest, and it allows the running game to open up more for Singleton and Allen because the quarterback is now a threat. If they can hit on all cylinders like this, I'll tell you what, Penn State can play with anybody. We'll see on New Year's Eve. I'll be down there with Bob Wischusen, at the Fiesta Bowl when they match up against Boise. And I'll tell you, that is going to be a game that is going to be an absolute heavyweight slugfest. A heavyweight slugfest that'll be won along the line of scrimmage. But Penn State, as much as it pains me as a Pitt alum, I'll give them their props, man. I give them props. And James Franklin is someone that you really, when you're around him, you just love his juice, man, and they've got it going right now.
It's linebacker U for a reason, and they are 10.5-point favorites right now in that Fiesta Bowl that Louis Riddick will be down there on the call for in the desert on New Year's Eve. Thank you, sir.
Buckeyes absolutely dominating Tennessee last night. They won by 25. Ohio State's largest win against an SEC opponent in the school's history, besting the previous high of 20, which was against Vanderbilt back in 1933. They now get Oregon, a team who's just allowed 17 points per game this season. Louis Riddick, Paul Finebaum joining the program. Gentlemen, fantastic to see you. The total was set at 46.5. Ohio State almost got there by themselves. Louis, what did Ohio State show you last night?
Look, I think, Gary, they showed you a tremendous amount of resolve, first and foremost, coming off of the Michigan loss. And I think the resolve really started offensively with the way in which they recommitted themselves to making sure that the playmakers took over that football game. Look, the fact that Jeremiah Smith only had one 100-yard receiving game in the past 6 is something that they just could not live with. And Chip Kelly was going to rectify that last night. And you saw he looked like the Jeremiah Smith of old on one of the biggest stages. And Will Howard was delivering the football with just absolute proficiency. And late in the game, you saw him take over as far as being able to run the football himself, along with Travion Henderson and Quinshot and Judkins. So really, it was a total overall team effort, a recommitment of sorts, to where now, they have a renewed sense of purpose now that they're in the playoffs here. This is not even withstanding what they look like defensively. And defensively now, obviously, we know that up front is where they're going to have to win football games here going forward, just like every other football team in college football. You have to win the trenches. They won the trenches last night. But the key players, the big-time playmakers for Ohio State, reemerged last night in a big way. Now we'll see whether or not they can sustain that.
Louis, what I was so impressed with was the resiliency of Ohio State. They heard the noise, especially from the pundits like me, about Ryan Day's future, and they blocked it out. And that was what was so impressive. They just went right to it. Tennessee is a good football team, but you wouldn't have known it last night because Ohio State beat them in every factor of the game except one. Tennessee actually did the most trash talking coming in. They had almost 35 or 40% of the fans. It did not make any difference because of what Ohio State did on the field. And credit to Ryan Day. He blocked it out as well. He did not let it get to him. The Michigan loss was nowhere to be found, and now they have a chance again to make a run.
All right, and we get to see them take that chance in 10 days. Ohio State, Oregon out west in the Rose Bowl. It was a 1-point Oregon win back in October. Lewis, what's your first impression of this rematch we get?
Oh boy, look, the last time that we saw Oregon on the field in the Big Ten championship against Penn State, they looked like a team that really looked like they were putting up video game type numbers. And it was just so easy for Dylan Gabriel and that offense to do whatever they wanted to do, both in terms of running the football and just with precision passing, both from in the pocket and outside the pocket. So that's going to be obviously a very formidable challenge for Ohio State. And this is something that they're not unfamiliar with. They went out to Eugene. They know what to expect as far as the kind of offense that they really present and the kind of threat that they present. I think the thing is for Ohio State, though, is to continue in this football game on this stage now to remember who their playmakers are on the offensive side of the ball and get them all involved and get them in rhythm early. If they can kind of duplicate in that football game the same kind of play calling rhythm that they had last night, then I think that you will wind up seeing them play, again, a very close game. And obviously that came down to a one-possession game the first time around that these two matched up. But I think you'll see Ohio State play at a much higher level and, play to the ability that all of us thought that they had before the regular season started. And they will put that Michigan loss way behind them, far behind them, and hopefully advance through these college football playoffs and maybe on to the national title game.
And Lewis, the one question I have for Oregon is the layoff. I spoke to Kirby Smart yesterday, and he said, yeah, it's great to sit around on Friday and Saturday and watch football, but you worry about 3 weeks off. And that's exactly what Oregon will have, obviously, since the Big Ten championship game. You like to rest, but you also worry about sitting around and not playing football, which Ohio State did. The biggest question I have for Ohio State is which one shows up? We know what happened last night. Will that same team make the move to Pasadena? And if they do, they have a very good chance of beating Oregon because they only lost by 1 the last time at Oregon. But I do have serious reservations. As great as that win was, can this team put 2 or 3 wins together in a row? And that has been one of the issues for Ohio State all season long.
Quarterfinal round of the college football playoff all going down. January 1st, we get a rematch between Ohio State and Oregon. That's Lewis and Paul hanging out with us all morning on SportsCenter. Gentlemen, thanks.